Welcome back to the Standing Room Only Podcast, episode 113. So much to talk about today. Baseball returned and the new NFL season has started, so there are a lot of trades, a lot of signings in both sports. NBA might not even talk about today. Most likely will not talk about the NBA. There's too much to talk about in the other two sports. I'm excited baseball is back. Before we get into the episode, make sure to follow us on social media at SROnlyPod. Follow it on Twitter and Instagram. And you can follow our personal pages. Mine is at the Healy6 on Twitter and Instagram.
And I am iGoose with 4 O's, Twitter, Instagram as well. Go ahead, hit that follow button.
Baseball is back. We're going to start off with baseball before all the football moves. It's nice. It's nice seeing people get along. It was very, very calming, I guess, to see all like the baseball hitting videos I saw over the weekend. Just hearing the sound of the bat, just listening to the, I guess there's like not really a lot of noise, like the birds chirping and the early morning batting practice, bullpen sessions.
It's back. You know, for a minute there, I thought we were literally not going to get baseball until the middle of April, if not maybe a little later, with how there was just such a clash. And that's what happens when you are in a position to where you could just take an extended vacation, winter vacation, and decide, you know what, we're going to get it done right before spring training starts. Not when you have your head so far up your ass. It doesn't work like that. But they got it done. They made it work. Both sides came to an agreement. I think there was a lot of urgency. The players want to play. They want to play. Mm-hmm. They don't want to have to, and there are going to be some double headers to be made up, I believe.
Yes, full 162 game schedule is happening. And before I get into more details with the deal, did you hear what the voting results were of the deal?
No, I didn't.
So with the deal, there was 8 people representing the Players Association, and then every team had a player that represented them as well. So there was 38 total people representing. They needed 20 votes in order to pass. 0 of the major 8 people voted to pass the deal. 0. Crazy. And then 26 or 28 of the players representing the teams voted yes. So, the players definitely wanted to play. The people who were representing the association, though, I don't know what else they wanted, but they didn't want that deal, which was crazy.
And that's the MLBPA, the Players Association. That's actual players, right? Do we even know the list? I know the NBA Players Association is led by Chris Paul. He's the president, but I never knew who the MLB was.
I know Max Scherzer was one of the guys. I think I heard 6 of the players were represented by Scott Boras.
Interesting.
And if you are in the baseball world, you know Scott Boras is the agent for the highest paid players in the game, and he just penny pinches all his deals.
Which explains why 6 out of 8 would obviously vote against, or together, if you will, because that's going to favor them plus him.
Yeah,
there's a lot of biasy there.
I am glad baseball's back, though. We have full DH, which is great. We already see it taking effect in Nelson Cruz signing to the Nationals. That would have never happened before. There's 12 teams making the playoffs. I don't know the playoff format. It might be the top 2 teams, I guess, get a bye, and then the bottom 4 play a 3-game series. I'll have to look up the format, but I'd assume it would be like football in that sense. And there are 12 teams. There is no runners on second base, in extra innings. There was a little bit of a debate of bringing that back still. Regular season, I don't necessarily mind it because you don't want to tear up your arms and whatnot. As much as games do matter in the end, they don't necessarily matter in the moment. And full nine inning double headers, which is great. I didn't mind either. I didn't mind 7 or 9. 7, again, kind of like the extra inning stuff. You could go like 15 innings in your bullpen, or you could get into extra innings in the doubleheader. That could hurt you. But you're playing 18 innings in one day. That's just going to hurt you for the next couple days because of the rest that guys would need. The big thing that I really like is, I told you about it over the weekend, starting next year with the scheduling, every team is going to play each other. The current format is like the Cubs, they will always play the White Sox. If you have like an interleague team in your state, you'll get like scheduled against them. But normally it'll be divisions of one league against divisions of the other, and you won't play any other team from like the other division. So this year, the NL Central is facing the AL East. So the Cubs are playing the Rays, Orioles, Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays. They will play the White Sox as mentioned, but they aren't going to play any other American League team. And in that sense, like every 3 years you're playing these teams, but you'll only play like one series against some of these teams, and some of those series are going to be on the road. So I think the Red Sox this year might not even be coming to Chicago. And some people would want to see that Cubs-Red Sox matchup, but you'd have to see it in Boston, and you're going to have to wait like 6 years in between series. But now you're going to have at least one home and away starting next year. Luckily in Chicago as well, we are blessed. We have the White Sox. We can see whatever team we want every single year. The Braves, they're an example of you can't do that. You can only see the National League teams, and you can only see what the AL division they're playing in that current year. It's going to grow the game.
Absolutely. I thought that was huge when I found that out. Obviously, like you just said, we don't have to worry about that here in Chicago. A lot of teams don't. When you really think about it, you have New York, Boston. There's not another team there, but they're so close to like every other state. So what would be a drive for us up to like maybe Milwaukee? They might be able to go to another state, I'm sure. But Boston, Atlanta, Seattle. Does Seattle have a team? No.
Yeah.
Just so that would be
just the one. Arizona.
That would be Arizona. Yeah. So that's prime example right there as well. Besides, I mean, if you're in Arizona, you can see spring training, but it's just not the same.
Mm-hmm.
This is I like it. Does the NBA play everybody? I don't think they do.
Yeah,
they do, right? Yeah, they do play everybody.
They play, the East will play each of their division opponents 4 times. They play like select conference opponents 4 times or 3 times, and then they face the opposite conference twice. Once at home, once on the road, which is why trying to see LeBron in Chicago at the moment is really expensive. He only shows up once a year.
Yeah. So, but that makes it, but that's fun as a basketball fan. We get to see that. We have the opportunity to not have to travel to a different state to see these teams. And now with baseball, especially, for me as a fan of the game, I might want to see other teams. I might go to a Cub. I mean, obviously, like you said, with the Cubs, me being a Sox fan, if I want to see a National League team that the Sox don't play, sure, I can go to Wrigley. I'll have a good time at Wrigley. But now it's going to be both sides. I can see any National League team perhaps play at the Cell, if you will, at guaranteed rate. I think it's huge. I think it's huge for the game.
Yeah, and like I could see the White Sox play a specific team, but I'm not really rooting for a team. Now you can go and see Fernando Tatis square off against the White Sox, but you still want the White Sox to crush it.
Exactly. Just to be able to see it. I mean, that would be the same thing like with LeBron, right? I haven't seen LeBron play. I would like to see him play in Chicago. I want Chicago to win, but I also want to see LeBron do something crazy. So that would be like the best comparison. So I'm glad they made all these changes. Oh, did you mention that the extra innings no longer has the runner on second?
Yep. Yeah.
So that's going to be huge too. So a lot of changes, but also a lot of faces, new faces in familiar places. Does it work like that? Familiar faces in new places would be the term. I feel like there's so much going on right now with the league with this season kind of rushing now, getting to spring training, which starts tomorrow, and then the regular season starting. But wait, we had to pause free agency. There's been a lot of signings, and we've had some injuries within the last couple of days. I just feel like there's so much going on with baseball right now.
Yeah, the big one to start off before we get into the moves, I mentioned how you could possibly see Fernando Tatis in Chicago. He's going to be out a couple months, start the season. He had a motorcycle accident in the offseason, and he has to have surgery. That'll keep him out for like 2 to 3 months. Not great. There's a couple problems here. One, due to the lockout, that is causing him to miss time during the regular season, and a big chunk. Because from reports, this happened during the lockout in the span of the 100 days baseball was locked out, and because of that, he was not able to get surgery. There's no lockout. He was able to get surgery when it happened, but as a player of a team, and like your contract and whatnot, you kind of have to see their people to get evaluated and whatnot. And since they weren't allowed to talk to the teams, they weren't allowed to do any procedures for him, because you don't want him to go to a random guy, they mess up the surgery, and then all of a sudden it's career ending in some sort.
Yeah, and at that point he's held liable for it too. So that's the thing about a union is you go on a lockout or a strike, it's a holdout at that point. I mean, that's the whole point of it. So, and the fact that it happened, and the worst part, what the worst part was, what I was reading is they asked him about his accident, and he asked which one. So, athletes, kids growing up, be careful on your bikes. And of course, we don't know the details. A lot of times it's not even the biker's fault, but that's going to be tough. That's tough because we know how much he's getting paid. That's a $300 million man right there. And not saying he can't heal, but the wrists can be tricky sometimes. The wrist can be tricky. Obviously a lot of things can stem from wrist injuries. Eventually you might have carpal. I mean, there's so many things that could happen. I don't think
injury last year too.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to be a problem, but you can't really count it out as being a problem considering the history. Was it the same wrist?
I don't actually. I think last year was his shoulder.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know he had a shoulder.
Yeah,
okay.
It was his shoulder. I don't know exactly what wrist, but in a sense, you should not be riding a motorcycle when you're getting paid this much money. It's inexcusable. The Padres legit could have cut him. They could have voided his whole contract because of that injury. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
They didn't, though, because they value the relationship they have with their star player. So they're going to leave it be.
Well, that would look bad, too, with the rest of the roster. Yeah.
Oh, no doubt about that.
Or any future free agents.
Like, let's say he's like 28 and this happened. I feel like, and he was playing okay, they could have released him. But he's 23. They aren't gonna do that.
Knowing it's only 3 months of time, good rehab, it might even be a little bit, it might get extended out. If I was worth 300 million, because right now I'm only worth about 100 million, I'd say, according to myself, I wouldn't be on a bike. But at the same time, I can't tell somebody not to, it's a whole different lifestyle, it's fun. And unfortunately, hey, I'm living on the West Coast. I assume he lives out there. And
no, he was probably at home in the Dominican.
Maybe. Weather's nice. I don't have a job right now. Still got the money, but I don't have a job. I'm gonna go have fun. So obviously you can't blame anybody in the situation, but it's so risky. It's just a risk. I mean, obviously you don't have to sit there and say like, or he shouldn't have to sit there and say, oh, I got to think about the team. But I don't know, man. If somebody was paying me that much money, I would, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, Bob Melvin said his motorcycle days are over. Of course they are. They probably had a stern talking to him and was like, hey, look, I get we could have cut you, but we're going to be fine. But you got to stop, dude.
Yeah,
You're
we
in
have
this
to
for
have
the
an
long
agreement
term.
here.
You're our
Exactly.
guy. A lot of people rely on you. You're trying to get better. Can't happen.
Yeah, if it happened, I mean, obviously you got to be straight up. You kind of have to tell him, like, because at the end of the day, as much as we love the sport for being the sport, you got to think about the business aspect. Like, how can I invest all my money or a huge chunk of my money on an asset? Not to say we as humans are assets, but we kind of are. No matter where we work, that's why we get paid. And there's risk because of this, something that can be controlled. So I think that's got to be a conversation with him and his agent and upper management, and just say, hey, no more. Like, what, we're gonna give you a pass here. We know it wasn't you didn't do it on purpose. Obviously, nobody wants to get hurt. But like, let's think about the future. Let's think about your future, because if you do end up getting into an accident, or even if it's not your fault, what if next time it's your leg, and now like then it could be worse. So. Obviously, he's got to think about that. And I think as a baseball fan, too, we want him to have a very healthy career, because he is literally the most exciting player next to Mike Trout and some of the other guys out there. But like, those are the
He's
top two
most
right there.
exciting player next to Shohei Ohtani.
Shohei Ohtani, you're right.
Mike Trout's not exciting. He's great, but he's not exciting.
You're right. Fair enough. Shohei is definitely leading the pack right now, doing what he does.
And speaking of accidents, I forgot to even mention this. There's been so much to like talk about. We'll talk about this for a minute. Pete Alonso almost like died.
Oh,
yeah.
I heard about that.
He got in a major car accident where his truck flipped like 3 times and he had to kick out his windshield to get out of his car.
That's crazy.
His wife posted a video of his truck on Twitter, and it was that truck was destroyed.
That's scary. And see, that just goes to show, though, like, motorcycle or not, it's just, you can't really tell someone go out there and be careful, because you just never know. Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, that's nuts. Yeah, Pete Alonso too has a huge career ahead of him. Obviously, rookie seasons, didn't he hit like almost 50 home runs?
He broke the record for rookies. He hit 52.
That's what it was. Awesome young talent. And I don't even think he's going to be able to return this season, right? I don't even think it was like anything like major to where he couldn't walk away from it, which is obviously, that's blessed.
Yeah. Yeah. He said he was like surprised to be there still. Crazy as that sounds. In some on a brighter note, though, a lot of baseball moves happened. The big one,
Many.
Matt Olson gets traded to Atlanta. Atlanta gave up 2 of their top prospects in Christian Pache and Shea Langeliers, catcher, I believe, for Matt Olson. They had a free first base spot open because Freddie Freeman was a free agent. That trade made it so Freeman was no longer coming back, in a sense. They could have tried to sign him, but you're getting Matt Olson, who's like 4 years younger, puts up similar stats, and they played the numbers game. And also, he got an extension, an 8-year extension the next day for like $180 million.
It's huge. I think that's a huge, I mean, obviously we know Freeman's gone. Freeman even had his post on Twitter, or it might have been Instagram, but also shared on Twitter, his thank you to Atlanta. They trade
168 to be exact.
That's not a bad deal.
21 million a year.
considering what he's had multiple 30+ home run seasons, 100+ RBI seasons. Last year was not bad, 270 something average, I'd say. And
Great with the glove.
yeah, I think that's a good pickup. That's a good pickup for a team that is going to be getting Acuna back. Hopefully, I don't know what his actual timetable is after tearing the ACL, but he should be back eventually. This is a team that is fresh off the World Series. I think they're going to be contenders again. I mean, obviously they are in a very tough division. We talk about it the last few years. The Mets eventually are going to be there. Philadelphia has been playing well. They obviously signed some guys, but I think this is big for Atlanta. This is huge.
Yeah, especially with Freeman leaving, and they get one of the best first basemen in baseball. The Yankees were trying to go after Olsen. I think the Blue Jays were also trying to go after Matt Olson. He's a hometown kid, grew up in Georgia. He said there's no other team he'd rather go to if it wasn't the A's. And he's there for 8 years. $21 million a year. The Braves just, I don't know what they know about people or like who owes them money or something, but they just get the best deals. We saw it with Acuna gain like 10 years, 100 million or something like that. And then Ozzie Albies 7 years for 35 million. And they could still spend more this offseason.
Yeah, they play it very, very smart. I think it's a matter of the potential. You're buying the potential. I think that's what it is. We see it, right? Like, we all see it. We know Olsen's a dog. Is he the best in the league? I don't know. It's debatable, I guess. At his position, maybe, maybe not. Could he be? That's a different story. And I think that's what the Braves are like. Look, we're going to meet in the middle. We're going to pay you a lot of money, but it's not going to be the best money. Not obviously directly to him, but like, you aren't the best in the league. I mean, 21 mil is a good. That to me, that's team friendly. That's team friendly.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
And he also is going to a franchise that I think the biggest thing is, like you said, hometown, and they're coming off the World Series. And me personally, Atlanta being my second favorite team growing up, I feel like there's a lot of history there. Maybe they were like, we want to give you more money, but can you take a discount? We want to try to bring somebody else in. I know they did re-sign Eddie Rosario, so maybe they had something to do with it as well.
He's only getting paid $15 million this year.
Olsen?
Yeah.
It was his extension that was an extra. So what?
No. The extension includes this year.
Oh, it does. Okay.
So
okay.
It's 21 per year. So he's getting paid 15 this year, 21 next year, and then 22 the remaining contract, and that makes up that $6 million he's losing this year gets added on to the last 6 years.
So it's like backloaded. I like how when teams do that. They're like, look, we're trying to win now. We're going to be a little bit less right now. We're going to grab some other guys. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
And the A's, they decided they were going to sell some of their guys this season, get more prospects. Well, they got a decent return in Pache. Pache should be a decent outfielder. He just never could find the playing time. The A's know how to develop people. Should be fine there. They got that other prospect, Shea Langoliers, should be solid. They got a couple other guys. They also made a move. They traded Matt Chapman to the Blue Jays. I'm waiting for Sean Murphy to get moved as well, but Matt Chapman gets traded to the Blue Jays. I trying to find out the details right now. He didn't have the best year last year, but we did see a Blue Jay not have a great year before, or an A's player not have a great year, go to the Blue Jays and put up MVP numbers. That was Marcus Semien. Matt Chapman, 2-time platinum glove winner. He has the glove. He has the power. The only problem is his average. But the two things I stated before that make up for that average that he has. He hits the ball very hard. And they got Gunnar Hoagland, Kevin Smith, which was one of their top prospects, shortstop, Zach Logue, and Kirby Sneed. I've heard of Kirby Sneed before. Yeah, Hoagland was number 4 in their system. Smith ranked 9. Logue was 27, and Snead did not crack their top 30. So they got
prospects. I think that's a good move right there. I think that's a very good move.
the A's being the A's. The Blue Jays get 2 years of control for Matt Chapman. Also, I feel like I've seen this story before in which a third baseman from the A's gets traded to the Blue Jays and has a very good career. That guy's name was Josh Donaldson.
He was pretty good, huh?
Yeah, history's repeating itself there. The A's also dumped Kris Bassett. Great move for... He went to the Mets, I believe. Yeah, Kris Bassett went to the Mets. Great deal for them. He's been a solid pitcher. They get another good guy in the rotation. Good for the Mets. Want to continue with the Josh Donaldson stuff, though. He got moved.
He did.
The Twins dumping salary, in a sense. They dumped Josh Donaldson, who's getting paid $20 million for the next couple of years. And they also acquired Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and then immediately flipped him to the Yankees with Donaldson. And in return, they got Gary Sanchez and
Gio.
Yeah, Gio Urshela. So they get a catcher because in order to get Kiner-Falefa, the Twins traded Mitch Garver, who should do well in Texas, especially against left-handed pitching. Gary Sanchez, I think he needed a new scenery.
Absolutely.
It's New York
crazy.
Media is
he's
brutal, and he just wasn't playing well.
He's one of those guys where his numbers, like his average is always horrible, but he's still one of the most dangerous guys at the plate. I think he'll be okay. Actually, I know he's been... That Yankees team in general kind of needed to move some pieces around. And I know that they were talking about moving around Gary Sanchez. Weren't they talking about moving him, like talking in the last 2 years for like the trade deadline? He was like the guy. So they finally make the move. I think that's a huge deal.
Yeah, and they pick up Kiner-Falefa, who could play shortstop. The Yankees don't really have a guy there at shortstop for them. Kiner-Falefa also is a catcher. He could play catcher for them if needed as well. Josh Donaldson, he's a power bat in their lineup. He's definitely going to add to that. Thinking about their lineup now, they're going to score a lot of runs again. When you have Aaron Judge, Joey Gallo, Giancarlo Stanton, you have Josh Donaldson. You also have re-signing of Anthony Rizzo for $44 million over 2 years.
Huge. Oh my gosh.
Like crazy.
But the Yankees are still going to finish third in the division because that's just what
fourth.
they do. The division's so tough.
They're pulling the Lakers at the moment with these old veterans.
In a sense, they are. I feel like the Yankees every year they're notorious. Every couple of years they're notorious for bringing in some big bats. I think the duo of Aaron Judge and Stanton alone, to me, is a deadly duo. But then you have everybody around them, and I don't know. I think Anthony Rizzo. I thought for sure he was gone. I thought it was just, hey, I had to get traded. I had to get traded somewhere. I went to the Yankees. Let me come back home. I don't know if you call it home, but to Chicago or somewhere. I know Chicago was talking about Rizzo potentially, Schwarber potentially, and I don't blame Rizzo for staying with the Yankees. I think the money's there. You're in a major market. And as tough as it's going to be in that division, offensively, I would say they are as deadly as any other team in the MLB. Potentially.
Yeah, they just have some other holes. If DJ LeMahieu can get back to where he was, and Glaber can hit well again, and whoever they have at catcher is okay, they could be solid. I think their rotation is a little bit of an issue at the moment, and their bullpen could need some work, but offensively, if it goes to their projections, they should be pretty solid, especially playing in that sandbox that they play in Yankee Stadium, the
Yeah.
short porch in right field. They
Yep.
just need to extend Aaron Judge yet next. Otherwise, he's probably gonna be walking at next season. And then speaking of other former Cubs moves, talks of Kyle Schwarber potentially coming back to Chicago didn't happen. He went to Philadelphia Phillies, 5 years, $70 million. He got paid. Good for him, because a couple of years ago, I thought the Cubs should have moved on for him, and he didn't deserve like the money he was kind of getting
with his injury. Yeah, he
think showed out last year.
Well deserved dollars. Like, this is a guy who literally played on two teams. Where was he at? Boston and Washington? Was that the two teams?
He started off with Washington last year and made the All-Star team.
Yeah. I thought he was great. And even a guy for, like, I mean, he's not a bad glove. I wouldn't say he's horrible. He's a solid glove in the outfield. And obviously he could play the DH. I mean, that's generally where he's at. Anyways, you don't really need him in the outfield. And I think it's a good contract. He's not overpaid. I think he's paid right where he deserves to get paid. And he's playing on a Phillies team that, again, in the NL East, that is kind of tough. I wouldn't say they're the toughest compared to the AL, but the Phillies and Bryce Harper and that team can compete. I think they can compete. And by adding Schwarber, I think that they will be able to compete with Atlanta, with the Mets. I still think the Mets might be my favorite out of the East. We'll see. But I think that's a huge signing. That's not the only ex-Cub, though. That's not the only ex-Cub to get signed today.
This one makes zero sense at all. Kris Bryant signs a 7-year, $182 million deal with the Colorado Rockies. Why?
Maybe he likes Colorado. It's closer. It's closer to home. I guess where he was just at is pretty close to home in Nevada, right? He's from like the Vegas area. I don't get it. I don't see the Rockies competing. Maybe there's something going on that we don't know. Maybe both sides. The elevation, he should be able to hit 30 home runs, you would think.
Yeah, I need to know exactly like what other teams were in on him and how much money was offered. I need to know that by like tomorrow. It just doesn't make sense, especially from the Rockies' standpoint. They did not sign Trevor Story back.
Nope.
They did not offer John Gray a qualifying offer, despite not trading him at the deadline last year. They traded away Nolan Arenado and gave the Cardinals $50 million just to get another third baseman?
It's a little weird. And you know what the worst part is? You're paying him for 7 years.
Full no trade clause.
This has to be, to me, for Kris Bryant, this is probably the no-brainer. This is probably... So they go out and grab Kris Bryant, won
MVP winner,
old MVP, won the World Series, and they're going to fill the seats. They're going to sell his jerseys. We're not competing for a couple of years. Let's rack up some money. It's a return on investment. And for Kris Bryant, he's like, 7 years, I'm going to be... How old is Kris Bryant? Is 27, 28?
Older than that.
This might 30. Be it. This might be take him to the end of his career.
He's 30,
maybe he wasn't getting offered a 7-year deal. Maybe these other teams were giving him 3-4 years.
6, 5, 6, potentially.
That extra year, maybe not as much money per year. I mean, it seems like for Bryant, it was a no-brainer. For the Rockies, I think that's where we're questioning why. But and again,
I'm not questioning KB. He can go there and hit 40, 50 bombs. Good for him. It's the confusion is on the Rockies' vision of what they're doing.
Yeah,
in their history.
I think that's the thing where I'm confused, because I've always looked at Nolan Arenado as like a damn good baseball player. Like, he's good at the corner there. I mean, I've seen him on SportsCenter top 10 more times than I can count. Aside from being able to smack the home runs and everything else that comes along there, Trevor Story, like all these guys that were good. Why wouldn't you try to keep the gang together and try to go after Kris Bryant or restructure contracts and try to compete? The last time Colorado competed was maybe a few years ago, and I don't recall them.
2018.
Yeah, and I don't recall them ever really, really being a threat in that division. Besides of like that small stretch, I don't get it. It's a very weird move. Like Bryant getting traded to the Giants, that made sense to me. The Giants were competing. They were first in the West. They were ahead of the Dodgers. Let's get that extra bat. At least we'll see Kris Bryant maybe hit 400 career home runs. I don't know.
I want to see a 50 home run season from him. I'll be happy
I'm trying
with
to think
that.
of like a good takeaway. At least Rizzo in the East is a Yankee. Like as much as we hate the Yankees in Chicago, like at least he's there, you know, in the Bronx. I don't know.
And the West is stacked at the moment. You have the Dodgers who are set up for long term. The Giants are getting to a very good point, and you have the Padres who are always going to be competitive.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the Rockies are close to being competitive.
Exactly. Unless maybe they go out, maybe they somehow grab Carlos Correa. There's got to be another big pitcher out there. I haven't even looked at who's available still. Maybe they get maybe their bullpen. I don't know. Maybe they somehow end up sneaking into the playoffs and being a sneaky team. It's baseball, so you never know. I just don't see it. There's no way.
And with KB, I did mention he has a full no trade clause, which means the team can't trade him. The leverage is on him then. Nolan Arenado had a no trade clause, but he accepted it. We see it in sports all the time where the good people, they get no trade clauses so they don't get like backdoored or whatever, like stabbed in the back.
Or traded to the Browns, stuff like that.
Yeah, and they're gone. They get the leverage of picking what team they want to go to in a competitive scenario. This was probably the best offer he got, and he was like, okay, I'll play here for maybe a few years, and then down the road, they may even have this dialogue during the contract. Maybe he says like, yeah, I'll give you guys like 3 years most, but if you guys aren't competitive at all or there's no structure, I will like probably request a trade, and then they could probably get prospects and stuff back for him.
I'm calling it right now. He's going to finish his career with the Cubs. He is going to finish his career with Chicago Cubs. Are they going to be competing at that time? Maybe, maybe not. I don't see why they wouldn't be competing in the next couple of years. We'll see. A lot more moves, though. A lot more moves. Speaking of the Cubs made some moves, but the biggest one,
they got
Suzuki.
the hottest international player, Suzuki. Let me figure out his first name and how to pronounce it, just so I don't botch it. They got Seiya Suzuki, 5 years, $85 million. 27-year-old out of Japan. The hottest position player from Japan in I don't know how long. He's the second most paid Japanese player in history coming overseas. The number one was Tanaka getting $155 million. He's the highest position paid player from Japan. Corner outfield spot. Could potentially go back to the DH. This guy's supposed to be good.
Looking at his stats from last year, the fact that he batted at .319, hit 38 home runs, drove in 88 runs, with a potential, I'd say a very upsided potential Chicago Cubs, considering what they did last year. And who knows who they're going to drop their money on in this. I mean, hopefully Carlos Correa, maybe not. But it's exciting. Now, obviously, the Cubs going international with players they've been bit before. Fukudome, who actually had some solid at bats with the Cubs, didn't really live up to the hype.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that I can think of. There's been others.
The only concern I have whenever we see a top Japanese player come over to the States and play is, can they adjust to the speed? It's a whole different ball game in Japan. They don't throw as hard, and there's a lot of movement in pitches in Japan. Come over to the States, Major League Baseball, it's all about velocity. You'll get some nasty throwing pitchers, but the main one you have to hit is the fastball coming in at 100 miles an hour. If you can't hit that, you aren't going to be successful for the most part.
Yeah.
And if he can prove to me that he can, I'll be relaxed. No doubt about that. It's always a risk signing anyone, but especially paying this much money for a foreign player that has had no major league experience and no like minor league experience in baseball, that's where I get a little concerned.
I think he's a good pickup. I mean, obviously you never know, it's a different ball game, but he won the home run derby in Japan in 2019, Gold Glove winner three times. I just can't see, is he a lefty or is he a righty?
He's a righty.
He's a righty. Okay. So they got a right-handed bat. Obviously a lot of times you like the left-handed bat in the middle of the lineup, but that's okay. I think he'll be solid. Solid piece to go along in the outfield. They still have Ian Happ. I think he's probably going to still get a lot of playing time.
They have Ian Happ, Clint Frazier. They signed like a deal.
Ortega.
Nico Horner might move to the outfield.
Oh,
they signed Andrelton Simmons for 1 year, 2 year deal. I didn't like that at all. I didn't like that at all.
I wasn't even like the biggest fan of him years ago when he was with the Angels. I thought it was just he's just a guy. I don't know. I guess that's nothing.
He's fine in a lineup like the Yankees that have all these power bats, but the Cubs don't really have that power bat lineup at the moment. That's where I don't like it, especially when you mix in Nico Horner and Nick Madrigal. I don't like the Simmons signing. He has a good glove, but yeah, I don't like the mix in the lineup with him. He's mostly going to be like a depth piece, I see, but there will be days where Horner could probably play second. He could probably play center field. There's a lot of questions of what the Cubs are going to do with their outfield, their infield, their DH spot. And they still might sign someone else this offseason or in spring training. There's a lot of notable names still out there. And the Cubs did show that they are willing to sign people with the Suzuki deal and earlier in the season or earlier in the offseason with Marcus Stroman. And they told Stroman, yeah, we're trying to like be competitive, which is one of the biggest reasons why he signed with Chicago. And I don't see them going against their word with Stroman.
Yeah, I was just looking at, I know they signed some pitching, but I think they need that bat. I think they need a, we see Stroman recruiting all day on Twitter. He wants Carlos Correa. He wants Correa there, and I don't see why the Cubs don't throw as much as they can at him. Within reason, obviously. Try to figure out what other teams are offering. Make the same promise to Correa. Throw him a 5 or a 6 or even a 7-year bone. Big money. Load it up on the back end. Because then at that point, you might be able to trade him if the team's really, falling apart. And tell him we want to win now. We finished with just under 500 last year with the roster that we had. We brought in some pitching. We brought in Stroman. We brought in Simmons, which is very questionable.
Their
We're not going to talk about that.
Starting to get pretty decent again.
Yeah, and the bats weren't bad. They weren't bad last year. I thought that, some of those guys, Patrick Wisdom came out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. So I think if you add him in the lineup.
Another guy I forgot who could potentially be in the outfield this year for the Cubs, Brennan Davis. Like they have Davis, they have Ortega, they signed Harold Ramirez, Michael Hermosillo's still there.
Wow, say Hermosillo, yeah. He was just on
there's a lot of major league contract guys. And Brennan Davis, he could possibly make the big league team as well. A lot of decisions to be made.
Once it clicks, That's the thing. That's the beauty of baseball. That's the beauty of baseball. You don't have to always spend the most money. When the team clicks, they click. Look at the Rays. They've been doing it for how many straight years now? So obviously, you do need some good pitching, and I think they'll be okay. Maybe one more arm wouldn't hurt, but I love Stroman going to the Cubs. Obviously, we talked about that before the lockout. Some other movements.
Yeah, the big one. Another Chicago player going to a different team. This time with the White Sox. Carlos Rodon gets paid to go to the Giants. 2-year deal. Was it $44 million?
Yeah, I believe so. It
was around there, 42 maybe. It was at least $22 million. Great for him, especially with him getting Tommy John surgery. He was just okay before then. And the last year he came out throwing 100. He threw. When was his no-hitter? Last year?
Yeah. Beginning of the season. He was lights out in the beginning of the season.
Because there's no fans at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, he was lights out. I think the Giants, considering what they did last year and they add him, they added did they get Peterson?
They also signed Jock Peterson today too.
Which is, I think he's okay. I mean, I don't look at Jock Peterson like I would like Carlos Rodon. I think Rodon's a huge piece. Mm-hmm. But I think I think that's huge. I really, really, really wish that the Sox could have kept Rodon, because in the first couple of months of baseball last year, including the no-hitter, he was lights out. He was literally one of my favorite players in the game, or at least on the Sox at that point, to go along with Giolito, Kopech, who eventually I think is going to start again at some point. We'll see. But yeah, shout out to the Giants. Shout out to the Giants and shout out to Carlos Rodon for coming together for a deal there.
And Rodon's, so I have the numbers right here. Yeah, 2 years, $44 million. He does have an opt-out after year one. So if he pitches very well again, you could definitely see him opting out, getting even more money.
Deal. Yep.
Getting more money. But also, the Giants have a hold on him as well. And if he doesn't pitch like 110 innings, they'll keep him for next year, regardless.
So he cannot opt out if he doesn't pitch 110?
Yep. So if he gets injured or something...
Yeah, that's the only way. Because if he pitches 5 innings a game, 20 starts, you're at 100... I think he'll be okay. The only way is if he gets hurt. So that's a friendly deal. We call that a friendly deal. That's a player and team friendly deal.
And yeah, Giants, they're making some moves to stay competitive. We'll see if they have that spark that they had last year and finish with a lot of wins. They're not going to have Buster Posey, but we'll find that out when the season begins. Completely forgot about this team, and they've sold so many pieces, and they're going to sell more. The Reds.
Oh,
I hate the Reds. Oh my, the Reds had a solid team a couple years ago, and now they get rid of everyone. They're back to square one because they're cheap.
They literally. Oh, they traded Amir Garrett as well. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. The starting one was they traded Sonny Gray.
Yep.
To the Twins. They traded Jesse Winker, who they had like 4 years of control, and Eugenio Suarez to the Mariners for like no one like super notable. So they got rid of those guys. The Mariners get 2 great pickups to help out their team. Yeah. Suarez, he only hit like 200 last year. He hit like 35 home runs. He's getting paid like $12 million a year. Okay. I feel like he's going to bounce back. No doubt about that. They're probably going to trade away Luis Castillo, one of their young guys. They traded away Amir Garrett, who's coming off a pretty bad year. No doubt about that. They're trying to shed payroll. But here's the catch. They trade Sonny Gray, who's getting paid $10 million. And then they trade Amir Garrett to the Royals for Mike Minor, who's getting paid $10 million.
It doesn't make sense.
Like, what are they doing?
Like trading my dollar for your dollar.
So many disappointed Reds fans on Twitter. A few of them just are kind of like done with the team. Like, I don't get it. They had the pieces there. And I feel like it's crazy to think baseball is like the one sport without a salary cap. Yet they have the cheapest owners possible. In every other sport, they are scraping money together to fit everyone on a roster. But baseball, they are scared to even get close to the luxury tax.
And it makes you wonder why. Because they're in a division where if they wanted to compete, because I wouldn't say the NL, the NL Central to me, as good as sometimes like the Cardinals, the Brewers, even the Cubs have been, I still think it doesn't take much to really compete in that division. So that's tough.
No, like good for the Cubs. Cubs are probably going to finish third in the division now. But like, I don't get it, man. Who's and it hurts because I know a couple people in their organization and I want them to do well. And now their team's just not going to perform in the next few years. It's
Potentially.
Tough.
Yeah.
And they're losing Castellanos.
Yeah, he's going to be gone. He
has not signed yet. No.
That'd be a little Chicago reunion.
That'd be great.
I keep saying everybody's going to the Cubs. At this point, it'd be cool to see the Cubs like compete.
Yeah,
even though I'm not a Cubs fan.
I am excited for Amir Garrett to get a fresh start in a new league, new team. He was good when he was pitching very well. Last year, he just didn't have it for some reason. I don't know if he was tipping pitches or whatnot. Great lefty. And yeah, I hope the best for him. Speaking of Kansas City, they made another move today. They signed Zach Greinke. The team,
wasn't he there before?
He originally started in Kansas City, and he's back. He's going to eat.
Interesting.
He's probably there to eat a lot of innings. And also, he could probably be like a 4 or 5 starter. He doesn't throw hard anymore. He can eat innings for you. He could probably be a 4 or 5 starter on any team in the league. But I think he loves baseball. He's old. This is probably one of his last contracts and whatnot. And we know he has social anxiety. Going to Kansas City, a team that's not playing too well. They don't have a lot of media in general. This is the perfect ending for him.
And he goes back home to where it started. I was
going
to say Zach Greinke. Yeah. Oh yeah. Hands down. He had a huge run with Houston. I think that'll be good for him. I mean, obviously I don't think there's any expectation that the Royals are going to compete in that division for the next, I don't know, when are the Sox, like, when is everybody retiring? We'll see. But no, that's good for them. I don't even know what's his deal, like a 2-3 year deal.
Let me take a look. It might only be like 1 year. I would assume it's 1 year at this point.
Yep. 13 mil deal.
Solid.
No terms yet. We're talking about a 6-time All-Star. He's earned 6 Gold Gloves, and he won the Cy Young in 2009. Wasn't even that bad. To the last 3 seasons, ERA is under 4, considering his age, not bad.
Yeah, very, very solid deal. And he's 38, going to turn 39 at the end of the year. Yeah, I think this is it. If he doesn't perform well and they have to get rid of him and eat his money, he's probably just going to call it a career at that point.
Yep.
So good on him for that. Wow, there's so much to talk about in baseball.
Yeah, it's never ending. Next week, there's going to be more.
Yeah,
next week
there has to be. We're a couple of weeks away from opening day starting. We're like 3 weeks away. And these top guys have to sign. Next week, we're going to be talking more about that. So we're done with MLB free agency. There's too much if we missed a deal or we just forgot. So much happened. So I'm tired of talking about MLB free agency. Let's
Switch
talk
it
about
up.
NFL free agency.
The National Football League. Wow. Let's start with the first things first. The best quarterback in the history of the NFL. Only started like 3 seasons. Mitch Trubisky goes to the Steelers. Goes to Pittsburgh. He's got to start there. There's no way he's not starting. He gets a fresh start. He sits behind Josh Allen in a very, very powerful offensive scheme to kind of just sit back and learn. I think it's important a lot of times for guys to take a step back. We've seen guys literally thrive after sitting on the bench for a little bit. Jimmy G was a bench player. I wouldn't say he was a bench player, but he was behind Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre. There's been other guys to step up. And I think this is a big opportunity considering you can't do much worse than what Big Ben did last year, and they still competed in many games.
They
have
made
a
the
good
playoffs.
defense. Exactly. Do they sign Tyrann Mathieu in the next few days? Maybe, maybe not. I think the Steelers, especially given the offensive weapons, Chase Claypool, Deontay Washington, Najee Harris. I think the Steelers very well at least make the playoffs again. And we see Mitch Trubisky. He's 30. I don't know. Where do we want to go with this? I'd say about 3,200 passing yards. I'm going to give him 30 touchdowns. I'm going to go 30 touchdowns. I do think he's still going to make mistakes. I do think that is part of his game. But if he limits the interceptions, that makes him potential to be dangerous because we know he's mobile. So, and Steelers haven't really... Big Ben at one point for his size was actually a mobile quarterback at one point. But now you bring in Trubisky, you have a good offensive line, solid offensive line. I wouldn't say they're the best, but they have a solid offensive line. Different than Chicago, who
They signed
runs
James
their quarterbacks
Daniels.
out. And yeah. And so, like, now we'll see. And I know it's a rumor, and I don't know if it's not a reliable source, but somebody was saying having the 2 best safeties in the game, Minkah Fitzpatrick and Tyrann Mathieu, if they get those 2 guys on the defense, on top of a defense that is pretty damn good at times, the Steelers team can be a playoff team again, hands down. We'll see what ends up happening, but I like the signing of Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
You're not going out and getting Wentz. You're not doing none of that nonsense.
They have the perfect bridge quarterback until they want to go with like a younger, potentially better guy to lead the way for the future. He's a perfect bridge quarterback. As much crap as we talked about Trubisky in the past with the Bears, I feel like most of his problems came from Matt Nagy and the offensive play calling.
Yeah.
They didn't play to his strengths. We saw in 2018 or whatever when they made the playoffs how good he could be. And then the system changed. They did not run to his strengths. They kept him inside the pocket. They ran a bunch of screens. I did hear during that time, like, he might not have known the playbook or whatnot. I have no idea. It's at the end of Matt Nagy being there, it seemed like he kind of was not the player coach that we all thought he was, especially with not talking to Allen Robinson for like a whole off season.
Horrible.
I think the Bears were a majority of the problem with him, and he could be solid and win you some games.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, if you can't get much worse than Big Ben's last season, so bring it on, Mitch. Bring it on. This is his actual time. I know a lot of people were like, oh, Chicago, la la la. Then he goes to Buffalo, and he's the backup, so nobody's going to see Mitch anymore. No, this right here, you're going to see who the real Mitch is. Now, I'm not going to say he's a Pro Bowl quarterback, but this will be the best version of Mitch, hands down. Hands down. What about Christian Kirk? That's the other one that came in mind. Christian Kirk signs the 4-year, 72 mil.
We'll get to that after we talk about more quarterbacks.
We got more quarterbacks. Oh, we do.
Yeah.
We do have more quarterbacks.
Yeah, we'll start off with the other greatest quarterback of all time returning in Tom Brady. He's returning to the NFL.
I told you we didn't have to talk about Tom Brady today. Come on. Tom Brady's back, people. Not like he was gone for long.
Most people thought he was going to be back. I don't know if he ever said he retired. I think people just assumed because he thanked people. He gave a big thank you.
He
never held a press conference.
He insinuated a retirement after it was leaked by Schefter, I believe, or somebody, and he's like, whoa. But then it was like 2 days later, he insinuated. But he returned. He is going to be 45 this year, I believe.
Coming off an MVP type season.
Very well could have won MVP. I do think Rodgers deserved it. They either or deserved it. I'm not going to sit here and argue that. I feel bad for the guy who just paid over $500K for his last touchdown ever thrown, which ended up not being his last touchdown ever thrown. There's got to be a way to get your money back on that if that's how it was marketed. But Tom Brady is back, and that immediately right there, does Gronk come back now? They franchise tag Godwin.
Which, as we were recording this episode, he signed a 3-year, $60 million extension.
Who's he?
Chris Godwin.
Oh, he did. Nice.
Yeah.
Shout out to Godwin. So now they can apply the franchise tag elsewhere.
Yeah. They've already traded for a couple people. They traded for Ryan Jensen. They got another O lineman from somewhere.
Huge. And to be fair, if it wasn't for getting off to a slow start against the Rams in the second half, realized how they could beat the Rams, but it was almost too late. The Rams, obviously in the last couple plays. But I think we're looking at another Super Bowl run for Brady. Depending on what some other teams do. Brady's... I wasn't surprised. I didn't feel happy nor sad that he's back. I'm just like, oh, Brady's back. I never really felt like he was gone yet. I think I had to go through the season of no Brady, right?
Yeah. It doesn't hit you until you stop seeing them play. And I'm glad he's back as well, because selfishly, I didn't watch enough of him play last year.
Fair enough.
This season, because of that, I'm watching every single game that I can.
And the division potentially might get better depending on, we don't know yet. We'll have more news next week, but Saints might get better depending on if they land Deshaun Watson. We don't know where he's going yet. He can go anywhere. He's been talking to the Panthers and other teams, but this is going to be a fun season. And obviously, other quarterbacks have stayed in the NFC. There's quarterbacks leaving. Baker Mayfield already basically said, thank you, I'm gone. So this is going to be a big season. This offseason, of course, same thing with baseball. Next week, we'll have pretty much wrapped up offseason, big names. But that is the other one right there. There's a few other notable signings, though.
Well, we got the numbers for Rodgers as well.
We did. Yeah, so I know we talked about it.
It was originally leaked 4 years, $200 million. And he's like, nah, wrong numbers. You didn't get it right. But they were pretty much spot on. Instead of 4 years, $200 million, it's 3 years, 150. Like, what?
Yeah.
Crazy.
So his contract is kind of weird because it's the first year is going to be the lowest amount of how much he's going to make. It ends up being like 30 something million. Second year ends up being 60 million, and then it drops back down to like 50 million. And then I think, doesn't he have, it's like so they call it a bumper contract extension. And so the way it works is it is a 3-year extension, and they have the ability, if he wants to continue playing, to restructure the last 2 years of the contract. So it's almost like he signed for an extra year or so, but on a restructure basis, which I don't know. Is he going to pull a Brady and play until he's mid-40s? I don't know, man. Brady's like, to me, Brady's just a freak of nature. He is literally the poster child of taking care of yourself, making sure you have a good line, taking pay cuts so you have a good line and good team around you. And we'll see. Maybe Rodgers does too, but huge deal. It's loaded in the middle and the back end. Assuming they were going to throw money at none other than Davante Adams.
Yeah, and they have franchise tagged him, but he doesn't want to play on the franchise tag. The Packers have offered him a contract. They offered him $23 million a year, which would have been the most for an extension for a wide receiver ever. He doesn't want that though, because he's focused on the number DeAndre Hopkins has in his $27 million a year contract.
Which, statistically, the last few seasons, Davante Adams has been the best receiver in the game. I feel like most players arguably sit out during a franchise tag as they should. I feel like, what if I get hurt? I know I have use. I'll go elsewhere. I'll go sign a 3-year deal with the Cowboys, who just traded away Amari Cooper, and they'll give me $24 million a year, a little bit less than DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm guaranteed. Obviously, nothing's guaranteed in the NFL, but maybe they can guarantee me $60 million out of the 3 years. But you franchise tag me if I tear my ACL, I can't play the next season, and then at that point, it's just too risky. So I don't blame him. And I think they should be able to work out a long-term deal. Long-term with the NFL, obviously, they don't do 10-year deals usually. Give him 3 to 4 years. Maybe you don't pay him as much as Hopkins because you need that cap. And you promise him to win. You stay. We brought back A-Rod. We brought back Aaron Rodgers. We still have the good run game. We might even bring in another receiver. There's receivers available. Allen Robinson said he wouldn't mind playing in Green Bay. And we go out and we win. Or at least give you the best shot. So you might not make as much as Hopkins, but let's not focus on that. Let's worry about your future and make sure you're guaranteed covered for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
I think that's what you got. That's what these guys want. I want security. I can go out and I can tear my ACL in a game, and then maybe I'm never the same.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, he's been the best wide receiver, and he hasn't been paid like it at all.
Yeah. It's crazy. The whole franchise tag is crazy to me. It's so crazy.
He needs to be paid. Like
absolutely.
He's not a one-season wonder.
There's no way. There's no way. There's no way.
And we've seen it in why he should get paid more than possibly $23 million, because we're seeing guys like Christian Kirk get up to $21 million a year to go play somewhere. And he's not even like a top wide receiver. He's like a 3. Maybe even a low 2 type receiver. $21 million. I think it's, as I mentioned, it's up to $84 million. I think his base deal is like $70 million in a sense. And the Jaguars, they went out and spent a lot of money.
I thought, yeah, when I saw that, and then I realized, because I didn't know exactly how much the franchise tag was for Davante Adams, and it's like 22, 23 mil when it's all said and done. And so the thing about Christian Kirk is they're gambling, and none of it's guaranteed. They can literally cut him after year 2, I believe, and it saves them like 11 mil on the cap because they would have to eat some of that. So to me, that is a little on the friendlier side for both parties. But just knowing Christian Kirk, who's been a number 3 in Arizona, never really dominated, is getting that much money, you got to pay Adams. I know a lot of times with running backs, you're like, oh, they're a dime a dozen. Najee Harris, we can draft. He's going to be good at because we have a good scheme in Pittsburgh. You know, there's a lot of teams that are like that, but I just feel like historically, you haven't spent money on receivers. You've gotten old, washed-up tight ends. You've spent some money on the defense finally, which you just cut Zadarius Smith, which is a bummer, but he's been hurt. You got to invest. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to invest in the Super Bowl. You got to invest in the Pro Bowl type players, the best in the league. So, and he wants to play. He wants to play for Green Bay. He wants to play with Rodgers. He wants to play with this. He wants another shot at the Super Bowl, and I think he will get it. I think if he does, they just have to re-sign him. If they don't, I will be shocked, and would be very shocked if Aaron Rodgers is not vocal about it.
Yeah, he's like the best receiver he's probably played with.
Oh, absolutely. Not even a question.
Like he did have Driver and Jennings,
Jordy Nelson
and
too.
Jordy, but the first two guys were older. Jordy Nelson, great wide receiver. But Devontae, he wasn't best in the league wide receiver. The footwork Devontae Adams has, beautiful.
Yeah, off the line every single time. Even Jalen Ramsey struggles with him, and Jalen Ramsey's a dog, so that just says a lot right there too. So Green Bay, at least they got their sheriff back in town. Some other notable, we did see Carson Wentz get traded to Washington. So he was a one and done with the Colts. He is now a Washington Commander.
Which is crazy.
It's weird to me.
The amount that they gave up to get Carson Wentz out of Philly, and I get that they got picks back, but they aren't even worth close to what they gave up with the first rounders.
It makes you wonder, like, what are they going to do? Now, obviously, there's quarterbacks out there, Deshaun Watson, Baker Mayfield. Like, there's all these quarterbacks. Jimmy G is apparently they might want to move on and get, just go with Trey Lance. So, yes, there's potential there. But was he that bad? I mean, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He was more of a game manager versus
He probably just doesn't fit their run-heavy scheme that they develop.
But that's, yeah. And you can't run Jonathan Taylor as much. I mean, I felt like as good of a season, as great as he is, you don't want to constantly run him 30 times a game. No, you don't want to do that.
He'd be out of the league very quickly.
There's only one guy who's been able to do that. That's literally Derrick Henry's the only guy that's been able to do that. And he still broke his foot at one point. So we'll see about that.
Adrian Peterson did it. But
Adrian Peterson was a little different too. Yeah, he was definitely a freak athlete as well. He tore his ACL too during I know for sure once. I don't know if it was twice, but even after he tore his ACL, came back, still put up 1,500 yards and is like, AP all day. AD.
He almost broke the record. He came back and almost broke the record that year.
He set a single game rushing record though. Didn't he wasn't that the same year he came back and ran for like 296 against like Green Bay?
Possibly. And
I'm
also,
pretty sure.
When he tore his ACL, he came back in like 6 months or like 7 to 8 at most. When ACLs are a lot longer than that, I think.
Especially as a running back where you're constantly planting and pivoting. And yeah, he was nuts.
I don't know how I feel about Wentz to Washington, though. They're just an odd team in general. They get like a new quarterback every other year. Who's going to be the core of their team?
He's back in the East. He gets to play against Philly. They still have a solid defense. I don't know. They're in it. The thing is, they're in a shitty division. Besides the Cowboys, maybe Philly is better this year. I always feel like Philly is that team where you never know what you're going to get from them. Cowboys, and then Washington. I don't think the Giants are really that good. Maybe they had some good games, I guess. Saquon came back. Wasn't 100%, but he came back.
So we had that huge move with Chicago. They're changing up their team at the moment. Ryan Poles took the reins this offseason. He's making the team how he wants it to be. One of his first moves, he traded Khalil Mack, who's getting a little older. He's not a part of the future with the team. He takes up a lot of their cap space, sends him off to the Chargers. And he's going to be there with Joey Bosa, Justin Herbert. I think it was a good move for both teams in that sense.
Absolutely.
They get an elite pass rusher to match up with Joey Bosa. He'll help them out in that tough AFC West. The AFC West is turning into one of the best divisions in football. Both West divisions are nuts in general. And then the Bears clear up the cap room. They'll take on the cap for this season. Doesn't really matter. But next season, they don't have to worry about his cap hit. They've also like released Danny Trevathan, Eddie Goldman, Tariq Cohen. They're getting rid of some like the older guys. And I saw a tweet about them having $140 million in cap room for next season, which has gone down huge because they did sign like Larry Ogunjobi, who played with the Browns.
They got a lot of draft picks too, which is big. We'll see if they know how to draft this time around. They've had some potential good picks. Obviously, some guys got hurt last year. Who was Jenkins, the offensive line that was supposed to be good. I think as much as it sounds like a rebuild, I wouldn't say this is a rebuild yet. You still have the star quarterback. Yeah, you're letting Allen Robinson go, but you still have solid receivers. You got the running game. You got David Montgomery, who has proven that he can be a multi-dimensional running back. And the defense, yeah, maybe you need a couple pieces. Hicks is gone. He's a free agent. I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you who's on their line right now. So yeah, they definitely need some pieces on the defense. But with all these draft picks, all it takes is that one playmaker on either side of the ball. And I actually think Darnell Mooney can easily be a number 1, number 2 receiver, especially with his style of receiving and the style of Justin Fields being able to be that mobile quarterback. So it's weird thinking that the Bears offense might be better than their defense this year.
Dude, I want the Bears so badly to turn into an offensive team. Can they turn into a team that like everyone's afraid to play because they know that they're going to put up 50 points on them every game? I'm sick and tired of the monsters of the Midway. They hold a team to less than 20 points, but guess what? The offense is so bad that they lose 7-17.
Yeah.
It's
been the struggle of the last like 30 years.
Change the notion. We're in new times in the NFL where it's all about scoring points and who can execute better. I want to see them become a super offensive team. And going back to Ryan Poles, I like him. I've liked the moves he's made so far, and I saw a video on Twitter from one of his press conferences that made me like all on board for him. So he said he was talking about free agency and how like there's like a first wave, which is mainly like the big guys. They're setting the stones for the like contracts and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, free agency, you're always going to overpay for people because you pay for value, which is fine. You can, it normally pays off, especially because when you draft guys, you're paying them cheap. But he said he likes waiting for the second and third waves of free agency because then you get the guys who have the drive. Like the first guys, they're getting paid, cool, they get their big contracts and whatnot. Second and third wave, you get a guy who didn't get all that money from that specific team, and now he has a chip on his shoulder. You might only sign him for like 2 years, maybe, but he thinks that you can find a bunch of guys with the drive in that second to third wave, and that's how you build teams. Like he doesn't think of it as a like long-term solution with a lot of these guys. He just thinks of every single year trying to find what pieces can make them competitive. And this could be great. From a casual fan perspective, you might see a lot of turnaround in this aspect, and you won't have a lot of household names because they're going to be changing.
But you're going to win contracts.
More. You're going to win more. No doubt about that.
I think the big thing is understanding that Green Bay probably still going to be the powerhouse the next 1 to 2 seasons. Minimum, I guess. So how can we kind of develop a scheme where we're still competing? Maybe we only win 10 games, right? But for the fan base, that's huge. And with the money that they're going to have available, if they know the scheme moving forward, like the Chiefs when they finally had that scheme, even like at the end of Alex Smith, right before Mahomes came up, they kind of knew what they were going to go for. If they have that in the next season or so, that's going to be huge. And I think that's what they're going to go for. I think the idea is understanding we probably won't take the division. Let's not put all of our eggs in one basket. Why would we go out and sign somebody for a 5-year, $100 million deal? And there's rumors potentially of a trade for Laviska Shenault, who is a Jacksonville receiver. I think he was a rookie last year. They won't have to give up much. Combine was nuts. Great in college. Good receiver. He had good games last year. So if they can somehow like some of these pieces together to let it, how do I want to say this? Develop a scheme without overpaying on a bunch of players. Let's, like you said, pay a bunch of guys that didn't get as much money, that have the potential, the high ceiling, that need a change of scenery, play in a major market, and a team that I think if I'm Poles, if I turn this team around, moving forward, I will be the highest paid GM or VP of whatever franchise moving forward because of the struggles of this franchise. Every year, there's talks about, oh, the defense is good, the offense isn't this. They bring in somebody every 2 to 3 years, and all of a sudden they're talked about like they're going to be great, and what do? They break. They break like cheap toilet paper. And I'm telling you right now, if Poles gets it together and makes this a competitive team this year, and a not just, I'm not going to say a playoff team, but a competitive team, and by next year, a playoff team, then you should know by year 3, all it's going to take is maybe one more pickup, or maybe it won't. Maybe next year's the year. Maybe not this season, but maybe next year's the year. But with all the money that they are going to have saved up and all the draft picks, as a fan, you have to understand, let's have fun this year. Let's let this new team compete. Maybe they go to the playoffs. That'd be cool. If not, let's look for the next 2, 3, I'd say 3 to 5 year window before we are the next Chiefs team. We are the next Bills team. Mm-hmm. Poles is 38 years old. He's bringing a new realm.
And a lot of people have to be reminded, what team did he come from that he was with for like 10 plus years?
Wasn't he with the Chiefs?
Yes, he was with the Chiefs.
And he was with them in his 20s when his NFL run didn't last, well, at least as a player. And so he was a lineman, and I couldn't even tell you what team, but he has that knowledge. He played football his whole life.
He did play for the Bears at one point.
Oh, there we go.
I don't know if he ever played, but he was signed with the Bears. Regardless, though, he was with that Chiefs team for the whole turnaround, and he's seen how it goes in the front office to turn a team around and keep them as successful as they are.
And the thing is creating the successful habit. You see the good stuff that works somewhere else. This is why, like us regular people at work in an office, you put this on your resume. Well, this company, I did this. We turned it around. I'm going to do this for you. You're going to get more money. That's just how it works. I think Poles is... I'm not going to say, obviously, they could end up having the worst season for the next 3 to 4 years, but this isn't Jacksonville, right? You just don't... Jacksonville, it's not even a curse. I just think their owners don't care. But I think that Poles, with his history and his resume, and a very, very hungry city that the team is putting on their back, and Justin Fields, who's ready, I think there's some big things to happen. It's still Green Bay's. It's going to be Green Bay's division next year or 2. Give it 2 to 3 years.
We got some other news today in Julio Jones being released. That's pretty big, especially for what Tennessee gave up to get him last year, and now they just decide the money's not there or like worth it to keep him around on the team. He's still a very good free agent or good player. It's just he struggles to stay on the field. So
that's the problem. It's always a
if he
problem
can
with
go
him.
to Tennessee was a good spot for him. But I would not mind seeing a team take a risk on him. Like a competitive Super Bowl caliber type team take a risk on him. It'd be great.
It's gonna have to be probably 2-year deal, team option, like 20 mil, like give him 10 mil a year, which is still a lot of money. Let's just see what you get. Let's keep you healthy. Let's keep you on the field. I'm not gonna say Green Bay. I'm not gonna say Chicago because I don't know if that's worth the risk. But whoever gets him has the potential. We know what you can get from him. You know what you can get from Julio Jones when he's on the field and he's healthy. He had a couple of big games last year, so like I said, he's going to get the money. It's just I don't think he deserves to really be top 10% of paid receivers as of right now. So,
We've talked a lot about so many different things. Von Miller.
Bills.
That's the last big piece I have before we go off a little bit on some potential other moves that we forgot. But Von Miller, 6-year deal to the Bills for like $120 million.
Huge.
I was not expecting him to go to the Bills at all. I thought he was going to return to Denver.
Yes, me too. I thought that was the subliminal tweet. Obviously, getting a 6-year deal. Von Miller's got to be how old now? He's mid-30s.
He's 32.
He's 32, 6-year deal. We're paying you till you're 38. Obviously, football contracts are a little bit weird. We don't know the details yet. We don't know what's guaranteed. But man, money talks, and like a long contract like that at that age, with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. This could be a dude who wins a Super Bowl with 3 different teams. I mean, we're talking a guy who's, I think he's been about as elite as they come as a defensive end. He might not be as good as he once was, but he's still damn good. He is still damn good.
He goes to a very good defensive team.
Yeah. And a very good offensive team. This team only gave up, I think defensively, they had to be like top 5. They only gave up like 290 points or 278. And
they probably would have been in the Super Bowl if they didn't lose in that overtime against Kansas City.
Which those rules might change. I know Tennessee put a request in to get the overtime rules changed. I think it's going to be every team gets possession unless the first team that gets the possession scores a touchdown and a 2-point conversion.
Okay.
I like that. You force you to and make the 2-point conversion like maybe not the 2-yard line, or maybe you keep it at the 2. I don't know. That's interesting though. But that would be that Bills team. I wish they were in the conference game. I feel like they would have beaten up on the Bengals as much as I love the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. But the next 2, 3, 4 years, man, this Chiefs and Bills, we're going to see them in the playoffs every year. This is going to be Brady versus Manning for the next, I don't know how many years, and I'm excited. And they had Von Miller.
Was not expecting that at all. There's still going to be a lot of moves made before next week.
Yes.
Any other notables? I think we covered like a majority of the big topics. As I mentioned earlier with the baseball, there's only so much. We're an hour, 30 minutes into this, and we barely scraped the surface on all the deals.
There's so much. We'll have more next week. I think next week we'll kind of like take a step back. We'll talk about the deals and our takeaways. What teams really are we looking at right now as far as they turn the franchise around, or now they're even that much better? So in both leagues. And NBA, we'll have NBA news as well. Bulls are still slumping against even bad teams now, so we'll see. Crusoe's back.
That is good. And Pat Williams is now able to play against anyone. He could play.
He's probably like 2 weeks. Yeah, I think he's about 2 weeks out, and then Lonzo's going to be a few weeks. Playoffs, just, yeah. We'll talk about basketball next week. Thank you guys for tuning in, as always. Follow the social media, SR Only Pod. Follow our personals. I'm iGoose with 4 O's.
I am at the Healy6 on Twitter and Instagram. We will see you guys next week.